Think about this with me for a second. Justin Jefferson would be the single biggest offensive bolt the 49ers could add from day one. He stretches the field, he creates matchup nightmares, and he makes everything Brock Purdy does easier. The deep ball, the intermediate timing routes, and the threat that opens up play action looks for your backs and tight ends. The reality is simple. Adding a true elite WR changes how opponents plan against you. And for a team that's already built around schematic excellence, that kind of game-breaking talent is a multiplier. But the flip side, we can't ignore what would it cost. Any trade involving a corner-turning talent like Jefferson is going to require premium draft capital. And we have to be honest. Giving up a first-round pick and meaningful assets to land him changes not only the roster this year, but the team-building flexibility for multiple seasons. So when people float first plus Mac to get Jefferson, the real question for you is whether you want immediate elite splash or long-term roster depth. Which side are you on? Type yes if you'd pull the trigger today. Type no if you'd rather protect the draft capital. I'm reading every single reply and will call out some of the best takes in the next chapter. Let's break down the quarterback angle, because that's the hinge that makes this all work or fall apart. If you bring in Justin Jefferson, you need to be confident the QB can hit timing throws and take advantage of vertical windows. Brock has shown he's got touch, anticipation, and an ability to throw to a true alpha receiver. But there's also the roster logistics. Do you keep Mac Jones on a short-term deal as a bridge for the Vikings still trade math? Do you bring in a veteran backup? The practical move here is to secure a low-cost veteran as insurance, keep your rookie picks where possible, and then build the offense around Jefferson's strengths, quick rhythm strikes, explosive outside releases, and schemed separation in the intermediate game. Now think about fit. Justin Jefferson isn't just a deep threat. He's elite after the catch. He wins on contested catches, and he demands two defenders in critical spots. That frees up matchups for the tight end and the slot WR to operate. If you blend that with a steadier offensive line and an upgraded T-target, your red zone and third down efficiency skyrocket. But again, salary and contract length matter. Jefferson's presence would push other roster decisions. Which young WRS do you keep? Who becomes trade bait to offset the cap? These are the messy, real conversations GM suites have to have. And they're exactly why this rumor is both tantalizing and terrifying. Before I move to the next big topic, quick check-in. If you're enjoying this breakdown, hit subscribe and tap the bell. We're trying to grow to 2,000 subscribers so we can bring you better breakdowns, more Eliv gear, and travel coverage for games. Also, real quick, midroll. If you love what we're building here with the faithful, consider using super thanks or hype to support the channel. That small support helps us raise production quality and, more importantly, fuels the quest for the next Super Bowl trophy for our community. Thank you. It's how we keep doing more for you. When you pivot from the wide receiver fireworks and start looking at the tight end market, that's where things get really interesting. Because if you're not landing a Justin Jefferson level wideout, maybe the smarter play is adding a matchup nightmare at tight end. And that brings us straight to Kyle Pitts. And I want you to think about this the right way, not just as a name, not just as a former top draft pick, but as a 25-year-old athletic outlier who still hasn't fully tapped into his ceiling. Pitts is one of those rare tight ends who moves like a wide receiver, who can win vertically, who can high point the football, and who can stress safeties in a way that forces defensive coordinators to adjust their coverage structure. In the right offensive ecosystem, with stability at quarterback and play, his numbers could absolutely spike again. Now picture him in this offense with Brock Purdy. Purdy thrives on timing, anticipation, and throwing receivers open before their breaks. That's exactly the type of quarterback play that elevates a tight end who understands leverage and space. When Pitts has had consistent quarterback play, you've seen flashes of what he can be: explosive down the seam, dangerous in the red zone, and capable of turning a simple crossing route into a chunk gain. But here's the honest part of the conversation. He won't be cheap. You're likely talking about a contract that creeps into the $15 to $20 million per year range. That's premium tight end money. And when you pay that kind of number, you're expecting production that changes games, not just fills snaps. So let me ask you this. would you pay top-tier money for a potential game-changing tight end? Or would you rather spread that cap space across multiple needs? Type pay or pass in the comments. I want to see where the faithful stands on this, because here's the bigger roster-building question. The 49ers don't just need one weapon. They need to get faster and more explosive across the board. If you invest heavily in Pitts, that might mean going cheaper at wide receiver. Maybe that's where someone like a mid-tier vertical threat comes in. Maybe you draft a receiver early and let the rookie contract offset Pitts' cap hit. Or maybe you decide the smarter play is going with a more affordable tight end option and using those savings to reinforce the offensive line. This is where team identity comes into play. If the goal is to maximize Brock Purdy's prime window, you surround him with weapons who separate and threaten every blade of grass. A tight end who can win 101 against linebackers and safeties is a cheat code. It forces base defenses into nickel. It opens up the run game. It simplifies reads. But again, cost matters. Depth matters. And this roster has multiple pressure points that can't be ignored. What I love about this debate is that it's not fantasy football, it's team construction. Every dollar spent at tight end is a dollar not spent on pass rush or offensive line. So if you had to choose right now, elite tight end edition or doubling down on trench play, which direction are you leaning? Drop Tay or trenches in the comments. And don't forget, if you're enjoying these real conversations, making sure you're resubscribed and notifications are on. We're building this channel for the faithful, and every new subscriber gets us closer to 2,000. That growth means more in-depth breakdowns, more draft coverage, and bigger off-season analysis. Now, speaking of trench play, let's shift the spotlight to the defensive side, because if there's one area that absolutely must improve, it's the pass rush. And that opens the door to some fascinating names, including Joey Bosa and even the bigger Maxx Crosby conversation. Let's dive into that next. All right, let's talk about the side of the ball that flat out has to improve. If this team is serious about getting back to the top, the pass rush. Because you can debate weapons all day, you can debate tight ends and wide receivers, but if you're not getting after the quarterback consistently, you're not winning in January. It's that simple. Start with Joey Bosa. On paper, the idea is fascinating. Pairing him with his brother Nick Bosa creates instant buzz, but this can't just be about headlines. You have to evaluate production, health, cost, and fit. Joey has battled injuries in the past, but when he's on the field, he still wins with technique, hand usage, and power. He's not just a speed rusher, he's polished. And across from Nick, he wouldn't face the same level of constant double teams. That matters. Offenses wouldn't be able to slide protection one way every snap. Now, here's the real question. Are you comfortable investing in a veteran edge rusher when the team is trying to get younger and healthier overall? Because that's the balancing act. You need passer rush juice, but you also can't overload the cap with aging talent. If the number is reasonable and the medicals check out, Joey Bosa becomes more than a feel-good story. He becomes a legitimate solution to a glaring problem. But then there's the bigger swing name that always gets fans fired up. Maxx Crosby. Now we're talking about a relentless motor, elite production, and someone who can change the energy of a defense instantly. Crosby doesn't just rush the passer. He wrecks game plans. He lines up wide, inside, stunts, loops. He's disruptive in every phase. The price tag for someone like Crosby would be massive in terms of draft capital. But if you're serious about fixing a bottom-tier sack production year, that's the type of move that sends a message to the entire conference. So let me ask you this straight up. If you could only choose one path, are you going proven veteran like Joey Bosa at a potentially manageable cost? Or are you pushing the chips in for a dominant force like Maxx Crosby, even if it costs premium picks? Type Bosa or Crosby in the comments. I want to see where the temperature is in this fan base. And here's why this matters beyond just sacks. When you generate pressure with 4, everything changes behind it. Your corners Dan Dijov to hold. Coverage for 4 seconds. Your safeties can jump routes, your linebackers can attack downhill. Pass hash is hinty, just a stat. It's the engine of defensive identity. Look at the teams that consistently reach conference championship games. They don't just have talent, they collapse the pocket. Nick Bozacante do It-Alum. You need complementary rushers, interior push, rotational depth. Whether that's a veteran signing, an early round draft pick, or a bold trade, this front office has to inject speed and violence into the defensive line. Because if you're playing quarterbacks in your own conference who thrive when comfortable, you cannot let them sit back there untouched. And don't forget, if you're locked in with this breakdown, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now. We're closing in on 2,000 subscribers, and this offseason is going to be wild. You don't want to miss a single rumor, draft shakeup, or surprise signing. Now, we've talked splash trades. We've talked premium tight ends. We've talked edge rushers, but none of it works if the foundation isn't solid. And that takes us to what might be the true priority of this entire offseason: the offensive line. Draft strategy at pick 27, and the big debate surrounding Christian McCaffrey's long-term value. Now let's bring this whole conversation back to what might actually decide the ceiling of this team: the foundation. Because as exciting as splash trades and big-name signings are, none of it matters if the offensive line doesn't hold up. If you're being honest with yourself, that unit has to be priority number one. You need to get stronger at center. You need more consistency at guard. And you need a long-term succession plan at tackle. When the offensive line struggles, everything shrinks. The run game loses efficiency. The deep passing game disappears. The quarterback starts rushing reads, and we saw flashes of that, not because Brock Purdy can't play, but because no quarterback thrives under constant interior pressure. That's why pick 27 in the draft is so important. You're in a range where you can grab a legitimate starter if you scout it correctly. Whether that's a tackle who can eventually take over on the blind side, or a plug-and-play interior mauler who stabilizes protection. This team has to nail that selection. And I want to know if you're on the clock at 27. Are you going offensive line no matter what? Or are you taking the best player available? Type OL or BPA in the comments. Because here's the bigger truth. If you fix the trenches, everything else gets easier. Your play action becomes more dangerous. Your running back averages go up. Your third down conversion rate improves. And suddenly, those weapons we talked about earlier become even more effective. And speaking of weapons, let's address the elephant in the room: the Christian McCaffrey debate. There are always going to be conversations when a star running back approaches 30 with heavy usage. That's just the business side of football. But when you watch what McCaffrey brings to this offense, it's more than yardage totals. It's alignment, versatility, it's defensive stress, it's leadership, it's identity. Yes, you could argue that trading him while his value remains high might bring back a second-round pick and cap relief. That's the analytical angle. But this isn't played on spreadsheets. When he's healthy, he's one of the most complete offensive players in the league. He changes how defenses line up before the snap. And that kind of presence isn't easily replaced by a committee or a mid-round draft pick. So I'll ask you directly, are you keeping Christian McCaffrey as a foundational piece for another run? Or would you consider moving him to get younger and reset the cap? Type keep or trade in the comments. I genuinely want to see how divided the faithful is on this one. At the end of the day, this offseason comes down to clarity. Do you go all in with splash trades and premium contracts? Do you double down on youth and draft capital? Do you rebuild the offensive identity with speed and explosiveness? Or do you reinforce the trenches and trust the system to elevate the rest? The smartest path might actually be a blend. Invest in the offensive line early, add one dynamic pass rusher, bring in a vertical receiving threat, and keep your core intact. That keeps the championship window open without mortgaging the future. If you've made it this far, you're part of what makes this community special. Help us push toward 2,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Every single new member strengthens the faithful here. And if you want to take it a step further, use Super Thanks or the Hype feature. That's not just a tip. That's you helping fuel the quest for the next Super Bowl trophy and raising the production level for everyone in this community. Drop your dream off-season move in the comments. Trade, draft, pick, free, agent. What's the one move that puts this team over the top?